Yes, the relay on YouTube. Check it out. Lots of stories about me on there. All the boxing facts and info that you want in a very entertaining, educational manner. The relay. Check it out on YouTube.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Why Sky Sports? I think I want everyone here to be able to sit at home and say, you know what, we're actually boxing today. If we're not going, we know what channel to turn to. I'm not going to tell you to download an app, to type in your email, your bank details. Type in a TV channel and you can watch me fight.
Down the lens, anything to say to them?
The message is simple. I'm back on a national TV where everyone has access to. Make sure you tune in, come and support. And the message again to the light heavyweight contenders, I'm here, I'm back. It's been a lot of time since I've been off, but I'm back now to keep active and most importantly get into big fights.
What big fights?
The story leading up to this latest development in the career of Joshua Buatsi is that he turned down the big fights. Some of the biggest fights you could have hoped to make for him. He turned down a world title shot at Dimitri Bivol, turned down a shot at light heavyweight contender Callum Smith, and according to Frank Warren,
Turned down an Anthony Yard fight.
so let's get it straight. Joshua Buatsi didn't go to Sky Sports from Matchroom. He didn't go to Sky Sports from DAZN because he was looking for big fights. If anything, he was running from them.
I've always, obviously we want his career to progress as quickly as possible. He's been very inactive. We made him a huge seven-figure offer to fight Dimitri Bivol, but yes, we matched those terms that were offered, and we'll see what's next.
There could have been an opportunity there to do Yard Buatsi had he come with yourself. So is that a bit disappointing to hear?
Yeah, very disappointing. We tried to make the fight. Very disappointing here. Very, very disappointing. Why are we messing about? It'd been a great fight to make.
Joshua Buatsi doesn't want to make great fights. What he wants is the most money for the least risk. I haven't soon forgotten that immediately after his last fight, was it a year ago or close to a year ago, opposite the ring, Craig Spider Richards.
In the post-fight press conference, Eddie Hearn proposed a Bivol versus Buatsi fight, and we've been hearing about it ever since.
Needless to say, it never materialized because Joshua Buatsi didn't want it to, and that's all right. If he didn't feel ready for Bivol, what about Callum Smith, a former world champion, the kind of fighter that he should be fighting at this stage in his career? And apparently, he didn't want that either.
Or Anthony Yard.
I'm fairly confident that based on that, he's not too interested in an Artur Beterbiev fight either. What he wants to do is circle around the outskirts of the light heavyweight division, staying local, staying domestic.
If this move heralded big fights, interesting fights, more interesting than the fights that Joshua Buatsi has been having, if that's what this move would have heralded, I'd have been all for it.
Joshua Buatsi is just the latest matchroom fighter that has migrated over to Sky Sports and Boxer. Natasha Jonas migrated over there, and it all worked out. And I've said so myself on several occasions that for Natasha, it was the right move.
I think she made the right decision.
To a lesser extent, the same applies to Lawrence Okolie, reigning WBO cruiserweight champion. Migrating from Matchroom over to Boxer doesn't move him away from the big fights. You know, the big fights that he wants to have as a cruiserweight champion. They can get him J.O. Pataya. They can get him newly crowned WBC champion Badu Jack. They can get him Arsen Goulamarian. Going to Sky Sports and Boxer doesn't put distance between Lawrence and those fights.
Those fights can still happen.
But the same cannot be said when it comes to Joshua Buatsi, because it seems like the reason that he ended up going over to Sky Sports and Boxer is because he didn't want to fight with Dimitri Bivol, Callum Smith, or Anthony Yard. And those are some of the biggest fights that he could hope to be in.
So let's just cut the crap.
This guy ran over there because he doesn't want to be in big fights.
Not happy that you've got Dan Aziz behind you, but no, I'm playing. Look, I'm happy to be back here. Like I said, the message is that I want to box on a channel that's accessible, where people can see me fight and not say, oh, did you fight? We're checking Instagram, we don't know what happened. So I'm most importantly happy to be at a channel that I feel is the home of like the nation. Everyone's got Sky Sports.
Do you have a...
That's the cover story. That's how Joshua Buatsi explains his move from Matchroom over to Sky. But Sky ain't got the names at light heavyweight. All they have is a domestic level prospect in Dan Aziz.
That's the biggest fight they can make for him.
That's not bigger than a Bivol fight, not bigger than a Smith fight, and it's certainly not bigger than an Anthony Yard fight. That one actually surprised me.
Anthony Yard's coming off his third professional loss, but that fight between him and Joshua Buatsi would still put a lot of asses in a lot of seats.
But Anthony Yard doesn't come from the same amateur background as Joshua Buatsi, but he's
He's already challenged for a world title 2 times to Joshua Buatsi's none. But Joshua Buatsi is actually turning down title shots.
He's a pretender. There's no other way to put it. This guy, he's not the real thing.
That's the story that time is telling.
He wants to run around telling everybody that the reason he left Matchroom and DAZN is because he wants to fight on a bigger platform, but against who?
You're moving backwards. You're going to a completely different platform so that you could fight a domestic level prospect. You're knocking on the door of a world title shot.
If he went to Sky Sports and Boxer, it's because at Sky Sports and Boxer, he can likely make the same or more money than he was making at Matchroom for lesser opponents, lesser competition.
The most money for the least risk.
It's not dissimilar to what we saw with Zurdo Ramirez years ago when he left Top Rank. As I recall, when Zurdo decided to cut ties with Top Rank had the inside track on the light heavyweight division. Several interesting and big fights for a fighter like Zurdo Ramirez, who had just moved up to light heavyweight. And what he decided to do was leave.
Circled around on the outskirts for a while, the same way that Joshua Buatsi is about to.
Fought a couple of no-hopers and journeymen, washes up on the shores of Golden Boy Promotions, and gets a hankering to claiming that Dmitry Bivol is avoiding him, just to end up getting exposed by Dmitry Bivol.
Can't tell you how many bozos bought into that.
That Dmitry Bivol was avoiding Zurdo Ramirez. I feel like a similar fate awaits Joshua Buatsi because he left Matchroom for the same reason that Zurdo left Top Rank.
This guy wants soft competition. He doesn't want the big fights.
And for an Olympic amateur standout that actually medaled in the Olympics, who's in his early 30s, it's time to shitta get off the pot.
He doesn't want to.
So as stated, if this move to Sky Sports and Boxer heralded more interesting fights for Joshua Buatsi, then I wouldn't be against it. But all I see is a guy who's running from interesting fights.
He can say what he wants, but he doesn't fool me.
All you're doing is putting distance between yourself and the real fights at this weight. Even more interesting is that Sky Sports appears to have picked up the rights to the upcoming Alen Babic versus Lukas Rozanski Bridgerweight title fight. And on the undercard,
it's important to note that Alen Babic is still with Matchroom, but because Matchroom lost the purse bid to Knockout Boxing Promotions based out of Poland,
which I think is bad optics for Matchroom, by the way,
that they lost that purse bid after staging several of Alen Babic's fights and building him up to where he actually has a cult following.
It's bad optics that Matchroom didn't win the rights to that fight. It's even worse that Sky Sports seems to have picked up the UK rights to the fight. In the US, I'm not sure if DAZN is going to air it.
But on the undercard, Martin Bakole is set to make his boxer debut, and young up-and-comer Caroline Dubois in the women's lightweight division. She'll be fighting as well.
This is further indication that what they've essentially tasked Ben Shalom to do is try to recapture and rebuild what Eddie Hearn built on the Sky Sports platform.
Getting Savannah Marshall to crossover, April Hunter, Natasha Jonas,
Lawrence Okoli, Chris Billam-Smith, Liam Smith.
More recently, Joshua Buatsi.
I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Billy Joe Saunders wash up on the shores of Boxer and Sky Sports, because all they're essentially doing is trying to recapture what Eddie Hearn and Matchroom built.
That's it.
Why else would they bother to pick up an Alen Babic fight that's set to go down in Poland? Alen Babic isn't one of their fighters. Not yet.
But they know that he's got a cult following in the United Kingdom.
He has more of a profile than Martin Bakole, I'd say, in the United Kingdom. A bit of a loyal following.
Croatian fighter versus Polish fighter in Poland. What is Sky Sports and Boxer's interest in that?
It's obvious what their interest is. They're trying to rebuild what Matchroom built. Beef up their stable with familiar fighters and familiar faces to shell out more content on the Sky Sports platform. Sky, that may be a very big platform in the United Kingdom, and it is.
It's a big platform, but they ain't got the names. They're trying to procure the names.
And procure the fights in this instance. You can have a very big platform, but it counts for nothing if you ain't got the names, if you ain't got the content and the shows to put on. Hence, Sky Sports picking up the rights to this fight. I half expected Matchroom and DAZN to pick up the UK rights for the show, but apparently Sky beat them to the punch. It's a very competitive market.
Ben's real job is to poach Matchroom fighters.
And they're spending a lot of time on that. with fighters they didn't necessarily poach from Matchroom, like Caroline Dubois or Fraser Clark.
They're not big names yet.
Richard Riakporhe. It could be a while before these fighters turn into big ticket sellers and big marquee attractions, so in the in-between time, what they hope to do is populate their stable with familiar fighters and familiar faces.
That's Ben's real job.
That's what he's been doing ever since he was assigned the role of attempting to fill Eddie Hearn's shoes.
It's gonna be a while before fighters like Caroline Dubois, Ben Whitaker,
Dan Aziz, Fraser Clark, it's gonna be a while before they're big draws.
they ain't there yet.
So you see what they're doing. They are attempting to make Matchroom and DAZN's job that much harder because the market is competitive. And this is what I told you from the very beginning when Matchroom decided to part ways with Sky Sports.
It's not bad for the boxing fans that all these major platforms have to stay on their toes, cross all the T's, and dot all the I's. It's not bad for the fans per se, but for the promoters.
It does make their job a little bit harder because now Eddie Hearn's got Ben Shalom poaching his fighters to worry about, either poaching his fighters or poaching his shows.
Or in the case of Alen Babic, poaching a show that a Matchroom fighter is a part of because he's a Matchroom fighter.
In men's junior middle and middleweight news, Danny Garcia, former two-division champion Danny Garcia, is eager to shock Lara, then wants Canelo, Triple G, or Spence.
Triple G is on his way out.
Canelo is up there at super middle, and he may be on his way to light heavy very soon.
Lara's under orders to fight Michael Zarafa.
I don't know about these names, man. While Garcia has officially inserted his fresh blood into the 154-pound division, he is ostensibly uninterested in protracting his stay. According to the now vivacious contender, a showdown against Erislandy Lara, the WBA title holder at 160 pounds, is what he craves above all else. But while Garcia has yet to end the Cuban's title reign, which really just started, he's already looking ahead to bigger and better things. After that, I want the biggest fight possible, said Garcia to YSM Sports Media when asked what he plans on doing if he usurps Lara.
Lara's busy.
After that fight, I'll be the middleweight champion. I'll fight the biggest fight possible. Lara, a former unified titleist at 154 pounds, has called out Garcia on several occasions, going as far as to say that he would meet the Philadelphia product at a catchweight of 155 pounds.
His eyes widening with excitement, Garcia quickly accepted the 39-year-old's challenge. Although he respects what Lara brings to the table at this stage in his career, Garcia is confident that his ability to take a punch and box from the outside will be a bit too much for Lara to handle.
Yeah, he might be convinced of that, but I'm not. I think that Danny's best bet in that fight, if it were to materialize, is that Lara's an aging fighter, now an aging champion, and coming down to 155 pounds might take something out of him.
It might, though if it doesn't, Danny Garcia gets outboxed. Danny Garcia would be in trouble. He thinks he can box better from the outside than Lara.
Well, that makes one of us, because I don't. Boxing from the outside has always been Erislandy Lara's calling card, whereas Danny Garcia, he's more of a mid-range to inside guy working off the counter.
Opposite the ring, Lara, who's a little taller and a little longer, a bit more athletic than Danny Garcia, lighter on his feet.
Danny Garcia is a flat-footed fighter. He does have heavy feet. The trade-off is that while he's not that mobile, he does draw power from the ground up. Opposite the ring, Lara, the task can't be to box from the outside. The task has to be getting mid-range to inside.
Pressure. Erislandy Lara is a pure boxer, and if you want to get to a pure boxer, you've got to put the squeeze on them. You've got to apply pressure. Danny's not a pressure fighter.
At the very least, he's a boxer-puncher with an affinity for counter-punching, and I wouldn't even say he's very good at that.
I wouldn't, because if he were, he would have beat Errol Spence Jr. in late 2020 when Errol was coming off that car accident and that lengthy stint of inactivity.
I don't have a high opinion of Danny Garcia's boxing, if I'm being honest with you. He strikes me as a B- to a C+ boxer-puncher.
Counter-puncher.
He always seems to let the other fighter lead the dance, and if you let Erislandy Lara lead the dance, you're waiting for that window of opportunity to get off a big counter shot, a big punch.
You're waiting for a window that might not open.
That's the tactical advantage that pure boxers have over boxer punchers, particularly counter-punchers. Counter-punchers need countering opportunities. Pure boxers deprive them of that.
Because they're economic. They don't throw a lot of punches. They're defensively responsible.
And the only way to get that pure boxer to open up is to apply constant pressure, the way a pressure fighter would. Danny's no pressure fighter.
Can you teach an old dog new tricks?
Now, I suppose none of it matters anyway, because Michael Zarafa and his team are actually receptive to the Lara fight. The order's already come down. Lara himself is not at liberty to voluntarily defend his title against Danny, so Danny's gonna have to wait.
Looks that way.
And I don't know what he means to do between 154 and 160 pounds.
Gotta wait.
Finally, in men's welterweight news, on the heels of his first professional defeat, Rashidi Ellis refuses to accept the Villa defeat. I just want the rematch ASAP, and I don't think he's likely to get it because rumor has it Roman Villa is going to be facing Jaron Boots Ennis in his very next fight. In my opinion, I thought that I won the fight, but I just got caught with a shot in the last round, said Ellis in an interview on the PBC podcast. Other than that, I thought I did good.
He started off all right, if we're being honest, though it's not how you start. It's how you finish.
At the beginning of the match, Rashidi Ellis was sharp, and the jab was working, the jab was looking good. He was managing the distance well, but round after round, the pressure and the pace of the match...
He started to slow down. He started to get hit.
If you're not already familiar with Rashidi Ellis, he is a pure boxer, and Roman Villa is a pressure fighter. It's that dichotomy all over again. The pressure fighter doesn't have all the bells and whistles of the pure boxer, but the one thing they do seem to have consistently, good engines.
Pressure fighters.
He's a guy with a good motor, throws punches in bunches from the opening round to the final round, and in every round, he's looking to close the distance and let punches go, whereas a Rashidi Ellis, a pure boxer, they're looking to slow the fight down and sharpshoot from a safe distance. Roman Villa wouldn't let him do that.
That's the dynamic between pure boxers and pressure fighters, and what Rashidi Ellis found out in that fight is that he really isn't levels above this guy, even if he got off to a decent start.
Say you have a A-level pure boxer and a B-level pressure fighter. The pure boxer's still going to struggle in spots. They will still struggle a bit, but because they're a level above that pressure fighter, they can still win. Think Arislandi Lara versus Alfredo Angulio.
Lara got dropped once or twice in that fight,
But he still won. He proved he's still a level above an Alfredo Angulio, even if he's at a stylistic disadvantage. Whereas Rashidi Ellis, when he fought Roman Villa, as crude and basic as Roman Villa might seem, he was still able to get to Rashidi Ellis because Rashidi is not a level above a Roman Villa. If he were, he would have won.
but he didn't.
I want that rematch. I want that rematch ASAP. It don't sit well with me, and I'm not sure that he's going to get it because I reiterate, rumor has it that Roman Villa will be sharing the ring with Jaron Boots Ennis very soon. And Jaron Boots Ennis,
Boxer puncher.
that's the style you need for a pressure fighter.
You can't spend the whole fight trying to put distance between you and that guy. At some point, you're going to have to stand your ground and fight him off. Jaron Boots Ennis, he can do that.
Tack on the natural size and punching power of Jaron Boots Ennis, he won't have to go out there trying to find the guy the way he did in his last fight opposite the ring Karen Chukatsian, a pure boxer.
With Roman's going to bring the fight to him.
Because Roman's a pressure fighter. That's what they do. I don't think that fight is going to end well for Roman Villa.
Maybe Rashidi Ellis can deal with him afterwards.
Maybe. I don't know what he's going to do or who he's going to fight in the mean in-between time, but it's not looking like they're going to run it back right away.
Rashidi Ellis losing that fight doesn't necessarily mean that he's a bad boxer. It was just a bad stylistic matchup for him.
But what it also means is that he is competing at a certain level. He is not head and shoulders above a Roman Villa, because if he were, it would have been a decisive victory for Rashidi Ellis.
And it wasn't.